Hello, hello, ladies. Happy Thursday, and welcome to the Gut Health Happy Hour. I am Marissa. I am your host for this event every week and the host of this nutrition group, the founder of the Happy Belly Method. So I'm so happy to have you all here, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic because it is something that is on everyone's mind daily in this group. If you have gut issues, you probably have some kind of food sensitivity, right? There's probably one or two or a handful of foods that bother you, or it could be seemingly any food that bothers you, right? So I think this is something that's going to be really helpful for all of you in this group. So we're talking about food intolerance today, and there are a lot of misconceptions around food intolerance. There's also food sensitivities. There's also food allergies. There's also autoimmune responses around food like celiac disease. So there's many different nuances to this topic, and we're going to dive into them today and dive into what is the biggest misconception about if your body reacts poorly to food. And that misconception is it's not the food's fault. There's something going on with your body. And people don't really like to hear that. You hear people say all the time, like, oh, such and such food doesn't like me, and I can't eat this and this food, that food doesn't like me. The thing is, it's not the food's fault, with one exception, and we're going to get into that. But instead of looking at the food as being the culprit, let's put a mirror up to it and turn it around and look at your body as being the culprit. Now, I'm not saying that to say there's something wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you, but there might be some dysfunction, some imbalances, some things that we can improve that would allow you to be able to break down foods again properly. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully get you to a place where you can understand what's going on with your body so that you can start to break down those foods again. Because my goal for my clients when they sign up for the Happy Belly Method is to get them food freedom. And that's why I had you all comment freedom on the post this week to get the link for the event, because that's what everyone should experience. Food is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be celebratory. We're supposed to be able to go out to eat or cook a nice big meal for our family or have that birthday party or that Christmas dinner and not be miserable, right? So let me know in the comments, what is the one food you would love to be able to eat again that you just simply don't feel like you can eat right now? I would love to hear what the most common ones are. And I know we already discussed it earlier this week, but I would love to hear what your number one culprit is, and we can see if we can break down the reasoning behind it and see if we can get some of the most common ones and maybe get to the root cause of what's really going on behind this food sensitivity. So there's many signs of food sensitivities, and it differs from person to person. And really, the different signs or the different symptoms can signal to us the root cause behind what's going on a lot of times. So it could be different for everybody. There's a lot of digestive symptoms, obviously, because we're all here in this group. We have digestive issues. So it could be bloating, it could be heartburn, it could be diarrhea, it could be abdominal pain, but it can spread out throughout the body. It could be skin rashes, it could be joint pain, it can be brain fog, it can be racing heart. All of these things can also be a reaction to particular foods. So how do you know if it's a food sensitivity? Journaling around it is probably the best way to go. But for me, in my program, what I am really trying to avoid with all of my ladies is any kind of stress around food, because anytime we stress around food, it causes our body to not be able to break it down properly. So I don't really love having to journal, count calories, count points, weigh food, count carbs, count macros. You hear of all of these things all the time, and I don't really love all of that, because I want you to be able to enjoy your food. I want you to sit down, take a nice big deep breath, look at your food, think about how exciting and delicious it's going to be, and then eat it, right? I don't want you to make your food and then have to sit there and count everything that's in it, or weigh it, or journal around it, whatever it is. So yes, you can journal around what foods are bothering you, and then you can remove those foods. But here's the deal. Just removing those foods does not solve the problem. So this is really a big misconception when people are going through some food intolerance issues or having symptoms, gut issues, or whatever the other symptoms are we talked about, is that maybe someone will tell them, go on a low FODMAP diet. If you've heard of the low FODMAP diet, this is a group of foods that can be bothersome to some people. The problem with cutting out whole categories of foods is that you're really missing out on all these phytonutrients in that group of foods, and you are going to starve your gut bacteria. So the more foods we cut out, the less we're feeding our gut bacteria. And if you've watched my gut bacteria trainings, you know that our gut bacteria is in charge of absolutely everything in our body, and we need to keep all of our gut bacteria thriving. And the way that we do that is to feed them. And we have all these different species, and all the different species eat different foods. So what we really want to go for is the biggest, widest variety of foods that we can possibly get into our body to make our gut bacteria super happy, but also to get the biggest array of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and things like that as well. So taking the food out for a temporary fix is okay, but what you need to realize is just taking the food out did not fix the issue. It might make some of your symptoms go away because now your body isn't reacting to that food, but the reason why your body was reacting to that food is still there and it's still happening. So it still needs to be addressed. And ideally, we want to be able to add the food back in. So that is what I do with my clients is we might have to take those foods away that we're a little bit intolerant of, but then we go through a whole process to be able to add the foods back in again. And that's the goal. That's one of the biggest misconceptions is you remove the food and you're good to go. A lot of people just say, I'm going to just be nightshade free and I'm good to go. But there's a problem because there's a reason why your body isn't liking the nightshades or isn't liking the gluten or isn't liking the dairy or the FODMAPs or the fructose or whatever it might be. Because if you think about it, if there's 8 billion people in the world and you are bothered by these particular foods, how come they don't bother those other people? It's because there's something going on in your body that's different. So if everyone's body worked perfectly, there'd be no food intolerance, if we think about it that way, except for one exception, which we're going to get into. And of course, we're not talking about fake food-like substances here. We should be intolerant of those. So if you eat pizza and French fries and you don't feel good, that's not a food intolerance. That's eating a bunch of crappy food that is created in a factory that's so chemically processed and has so much stuff added to it that it's not food anymore. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real food, if you are intolerant of real food. The next thing, so people, here's the steps people go through. They take the food out, or they add in, hi mom, Kathy might be late, okay. Or they add in Band-Aid solutions. They're having gut issues, they're having heartburn, so they take Zantac, or the doctor puts them on omeprazole, or they pop a bunch of Tums after every time they eat, or every food gives them diarrhea, so they just take Imodium AD, or food makes them constipated, so they take Miralax, or the doctor says you just need a higher fiber diet, so they put in some Metamucil. These are all Band-Aid solutions. They're not solutions. They're just Band-Aids that cover up your problem. So the problem is still there. The real true issue is still there. Whatever is causing these things to happen is still happening. So just removing the food or just taking these Band-Aid, there's got to be another word for solution because they're not solutions. Just using these Band-Aids is making things worse, actually, because it's giving you a false sense that you have gotten better. But all the while you're actually getting worse. And what can happen is this is your body's way of telling you something is wrong. So when you get the bloating, the heartburn, the diarrhea, this is your body's way of saying, hey lady, there's something wrong down here that we need to look at, right? So instead of just taking away the food and going, okay, I'm better now, we need to actually address what's really going on. A lot of people also, the next thing people do is take a food intolerance test. And there are many reasons why I don't like this way of going about it. Number one, just like we're already talking about, this doesn't solve the problem. Even if it tells you these foods that your body doesn't like, what's the solution? You just take those away? And then what? Whatever's underlying is still happening, but then what? You can just never eat those foods again? I don't love that. It can also give you false positives. And there are some of these tests that will give you like 100 different foods and they rate them all on how intolerant your body is. All this does is create stress around eating. And any stress around eating is going to cause your body to not break down food. If you need to learn more about this, go back and watch my stress training from 2 weeks ago. Any stress that happens around eating will cause you to not break down your food. So I don't want you sitting there with your list and every meal you're about to sit down and eat, open up your list and go, how intolerant am I of all these foods? That is just creating stress around it. And they could be false positives. There could also be foods that aren't on that list that you are sensitive to, but that particular test doesn't show you. There are many different types of food sensitivity tests, and they don't all show you the same foods because they're testing in different methods. So you would have to do 5 different tests to really get the full picture of all the different methods showing you all the different foods. Now, how stressful does that sound, right? And just doing one test is going to show you one little snapshot, but it could also give you those false positives. So the whole thing ends up not giving you all the correct information and ends up stressing you out around your meals. And we still haven't solved the problem. If it's not the food's fault, there's something going on in your body. Just taking that food sensitivity test does not tell you what's going on in your body. Now, if you're working with a practitioner and they want to do a food sensitivity test so that they know what to take away while they figure out the root cause, that would probably be better. But if you're just doing the test as a singular way to treat this, that's not the solution, right? So that's the normal method we go through. We take away the food, we put a bunch of Band-Aids on, and we do a food sensitivity test. At the end of the day, has anything been solved? Nothing has been solved, right? We still don't know why it happened, and your body's still going to be creating that problem all along. So, as I said, it's not the food's fault, except for one particular case, and that would be gluten. So put gluten in the comments if you are sensitive or intolerant to gluten or you have celiac. I want to get a gauge of how many people in this group are sensitive or intolerant of gluten. This is the one case where it is the food's fault. So there's a lot of talk out there about gluten. Like, why didn't we ever hear of this 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago? It's because, hi, Brandy. There are many reasons for this. So here's the thing with wheat. Gluten is a protein in wheat, also barley and rye, but they're much less talked about. Wheat is the bigger problem because, yeah, Melissa, gluten tolerant. Yeah, wheat is the bigger problem because what they did was they took this crop. They knew they could make this crop into this massive crop that could feed the world, right? And there are companies that are out there trying to feed the world with this crop. Well-intentioned, maybe. But what they've done is they have hybridized it so much, which means they took it from its real form, where people used to eat it 100 years ago, in its real form. And nobody had gluten intolerance back then because it was just a real food. And it was grown in mineral-rich soil, and it wasn't covered in pesticides. But now what they've done is they've hybridized this plant so many times, it's not even a real food anymore. It's something that us humans have now created to grow massive amounts of it, faster, bigger, higher yield. And it is now a food-like substance. It contains a ton more gluten. A ton is not an exact number, but there is a ton more gluten in wheat now than there used to be back in the day. It is now not grown in healthy soil. So we've robbed the soil of all the nutrients because we're just growing the same crop over and over again. It's not being fertilized by ruminants, by animals on the property. And we're now just completely covering all the wheat crops with Roundup. And if you've heard me talk about glyphosate, you know the whole deal with glyphosate. If you need more information on glyphosate, I have a million resources on it. I wrote an article on it. Glyphosate, in my mind, is the number one danger of our health today. So they spray all the crops with this glyphosate. Glyphosate kills our good gut bacteria. It causes leaky gut, and it's directly linked to certain cancers. So with these wheat crops, they're now man-made wheat. They're not even real wheat anymore. They're grown in totally depleted soil. If any gardeners out there know, you must take care of your soil to be able to have plants that are good for you. They completely spray it with Roundup, and they usually spray it 3 times. They want to kill the pests, they want to kill the weeds, but then it also helps them when they are ready to harvest. So now we have mutant seeds grown in synthetic soil, bathed in chemicals. Then we take it, put it through such a crazy processing system that what is it even coming out as at the end? This is not even food anymore. We highly heat it, we put it through these mills to make it into teeny tiny pieces, and then we chemically process it and add all these gums and fillers and chemicals, and here's your bread, and here's your pasta, and here's your donut, and here's whatever that the gluten is going into. When I first stated that I was gluten intolerant, probably 10 years ago, probably even more than that, I got made fun of all the time. I still get made fun of all the time. Because everyone would say, everyone else eats gluten just fine. Everyone I've ever known eats gluten just fine. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Danita. The thing is that the gluten is part of the problem, but it's also just the rest of the wheat crop, the way we grow it, the way we process it, is also the problem. It's not a food anymore. And so why can some people eat it just fine and some people can't? We're getting back to, it's not the food, it's you, right? So yes, gluten is a problem. But if your body is super strong, super hardy, working really well, it should be able to handle anything that comes its way. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So when we're looking at building our health home, so if you want to live in this home for the rest of your life, and hopefully it's another 30, 40, 50 years, what are you going to build it out of? Do you want all the cells of your body to be built from pizza and French fries and McDonald's and candy and donuts? Or do you want the cells of your body to be built from real, organic, non-chemically sprayed, healthy food? So that's number one. Too much these days, we are not giving our body what it needs just at the very baseline, which is just enough nutrients. So we talked about this last week. Only 1 in 10 Americans gets enough nutrients from their food. So when we look at building our health home, and if we don't have enough nutrients, that's just the very, very baseline. Then when some offender comes our way, the home is not going to be strong. So we talked about the 4 pillars. Nutrients, our gut bacteria, detoxification, and the gut-brain connection. These are the 4 pillars of our health home. The roof sits on top. If any one of these pillars is depleted, the roof is going to fall down. If you build your health home with those 4 pillars super strong, and then a storm comes, your house is going to stand strong. But sometimes when we start out as babies, these pillars are already depleted. Sometimes as babies, we start out with toxins in our system, with leaky gut, with bacterial imbalance, and in a stressed environment. So those are 4 pillars. So from childbirth, through childhood, through our teenage years, through our adult years, looking at those 4 pillars, think about how strong those four pillars have been for you through your whole life. And then you can see why you might react to foods more than other people. For me, I had leaky gut for 35 years. Didn't know it, but all the food that I was eating on top of having leaky gut. So I don't know about you, but my favorite cereal was Fruity Pebbles and Cocoa Pebbles. Tell me your favorite childhood cereal in the comments. I loved Pop Tarts. I loved Kraft mac and cheese. I drank Pepsi. And then that was my teenage years, went on into my 20s and lived on alcohol and quesadillas and French fries and tater tots. But when you already start out compromised, then you put all that stuff on top of it, your body is going to go, what the heck is happening? And a food like gluten is going to come in and your body is going to say, no, this is not happening. We're already on the struggle bus. This cannot be happening. Hi, Wendy. Frosted Flakes and Kraft. Yes, this is what we all grew up on. If you are a child of the 80s or the 90s, this was the food. So the main culprit here, you guys, and really what we're talking about, what all of this comes back to, is creating that strong health home. And the basics that we need for that health home are those 4 pillars. But the reason for food intolerance, the real reason for food intolerance, I would say 80% is leaky gut. So, leaky gut, when your small intestinal lining gets damaged. So it's supposed to be nice and strong, Fruit Loops and Top Ramen, exactly, right? So our intestinal lining is supposed to be nice and strong, but we want it to be a little bit permeable because that's where we absorb our nutrients, our protein. We want things to be able to get into our body that we need. That's where we get our nutrients from. But you can start out with leaky gut when you're born, like I did. You can cause leaky gut through all these years. Stress, food, antibiotics, sugar, over-the-counter meds, prescription meds, all of these things can contribute. And if you want my full leaky gut training, you can comment leaky and I will send it to you. But all of these things cause this sort of permeability, hyperpermeability to happen in the intestinal lining. So this is, the technical term is intestinal hyperpermeability, but we call it leaky gut because that's much easier to say. It's a gross sounding term, but that is what it is. It's literally things that are supposed to go through your gut that are waste to be pooped out are now seeping through your intestinal lining and spreading out through your body. If in the beginning of these stages, let's say some food particles get through there of a particular food, and your body goes, uh-oh, this is not supposed to be circulating through the body. It's going to flag it as a toxin. We have cells called mast cells that are sort of defense cells, and these cells are meant to release things like histamine into the body to try and fight off these pathogens. And they can create memories of certain things coming into the body. Now there's a memory of this food sneaking into the body. The mast cell releases all of these things that are meant to fight it off. Well, when this process just keeps happening over and over again, the body gets super inflamed. So, we've all heard a lot about inflammation. Acute inflammation, like here and there, is good. We want inflammation. We want those mast cells to say, look, there's an invader, something's going on. When you cut yourself, your body sends inflammation to that cut to heal it. Your body sends inflammation to your gut lining if there's something going on there, whatever's going on. But if it's a constant barrage of inflammation happening in the body and all these cells are overreacting all the time, that is when we run into all these problems. So yeah, almonds and peanut sensitivity, yeah. So actual allergies are a different story. There are actual allergies that people have, and you can learn that through a blood test, and those are more accurate. Allergies are different than intolerances and sensitivities. High fiber and fermented foods cause to SIBO. So SIBO, for those of you who don't know, is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So we want all of our bacteria to be in our large intestine. If there's some dysfunction happening, they can be allowed to creep up into the small intestine where we don't want them. And then some high fiber foods and some FODMAPs, like I was talking about, can be really bothersome. So if we can clear up that SIBO, get the bacteria back down to where we want it, then you can eat those foods again. So that's another reason why there's a sensitivity. But again, it's not the food's fault. It's not the high fiber food's fault. It's some kind of dysfunction happening along the way that allowed that bacteria to move up, right? So when we look at leaky gut, if we don't do any work to seal up that leaky gut, this barrage of things coming into the body is happening. It's inflaming the body. It's causing these cell activations. It's going to settle into maybe your joints. That's when you have joint pain and arthritis. It could settle into your thyroid, and your body can start attacking the thyroid because the toxins are there. All kinds of issues can start happening all throughout the body because now the body is toxic. And so our first line of defense against leaky gut is our gut bacteria. So when we're looking at not being able to digest foods well, there's a whole system that's happening. So first of all, we need to seal up that leaky gut. We need to build back up that first line of defense, which is our gut bacteria. Our gut bacteria also helps us to digest the food. So if there's some foods you're not digesting, it could be a lack of gut bacteria. We also need to make sure that your pancreas is working well, because your pancreas is what releases pancreatic enzymes, and those enzymes specifically break down food. One of those is lactase, is an enzyme that breaks down lactose. So if you're not breaking down lactose, you're missing lactase. There's always some kind of a connection. There's always something we can pinpoint that can say that is why you're not breaking down that food. Could be a lack of stomach acid. If you've taken years and years of PPIs or any kind of acid reducing medications, it can totally throw off your good amount of stomach acid. You want your stomach acid to be strong, like battery acid, hot and acidic, because then when the food goes down, it gets to work and it breaks all that food down properly and sends it on its way. If we don't have that stomach acid strong and hot and acidic, that food sits there, doesn't really get broken down, then you get the bloating and all of the other things happening. So rather than doing what we talked about before, cutting out the foods, putting Band-Aids on, and taking a food sensitivity test, what I would rather do with my clients is get those 4 pillars nice and strong. Get that roof built. Get your house so strong that whatever food comes its way, you're going to be just fine. I've actually seen people be able to eat any food in the world. When they went from a list of this many foods they could eat, now they can absolutely eat anything. I used to not be able to eat gluten. I can eat gluten now. Of course, I'm very careful about the type. I'm not just going to go buy Wonder Bread and think that my body's going to be okay, because again, that's a food-like substance. It's not real food. But I'm not guaranteeing it 100%, but there's always a chance you can reverse and improve these food sensitivities by strengthening the integrity of your gut and strengthening the way your digestive system works, giving your body all of its nutrients, reducing stress. Stress is one of the most overlooked reasons for food intolerance. Stress will activate those mast cells to send cortisol into your body, because cortisol is how you deal with stress. Now we're still just sending those mast cells into hyper overdrive, right? So there's always a scientific reason behind these things. And there's a reason why so many people now are way more food intolerant than even 20 years ago, right? And we can pinpoint it to all these different things. So that is what I do with my clients in my program, is we figure out what is going on at the root, and we need to do it individually. That's why just blanket programs don't work, and blanket diets don't work, and blanket advice and Googling on the internet, because we need to figure it out for you. And that's how we get to the root of what's going on, build your health home, make it really strong. That way, anything that comes your way, you can handle, whether it's stress, whether it's food, whether it's a virus, whether it's whatever else comes your way. We want your health home to be strong into your later years of life. Danita, yeah, the 4 pillars. So I do have a 4 pillar training that I did specifically on those 4 pillars. So let me grab that link and it will go into detail of exactly what the 4 pillars are and exactly what we do in my program to make those nice and strong. So nutrition, and this is not as easy as it sounds. I did nutrients training last week. Really good one, you guys. If you want to just build the baseline of health, that is just the first place to start. Rather than trying to address specific symptoms and specific weird things that are going on, like how about let's just build the foundation of health to begin with? Because once you build that foundation and you make that strong health home, your body can heal itself. Nothing heals your body for you. Your body heals itself. It's given this natural ability to do that. But in order to do that, we've got to give it all of its nutrients. And I'm talking more than the minimum FDA recommended amount. Like, you don't want the minimum amount of health, right? You want an optimum amount of health. So we want to get you all of your nutrients plus in an easily absorbable way. Because again, if you have leaky gut, you're not absorbing your nutrients. So it's a catch-22 here. So we've got to get you nutrients. We got to detoxify the body. All these toxins that are coming through your body because of leaky gut, we've got to get them out of the body, or else your body is going to be constantly trying to attack them to get them out. And your body's going to be constantly inflamed. The bacterial balance. Your bacteria is in charge of everything. So we've got to get that bacteria back into good balance. And that's why I test every one of my clients. We do a gut microbiome test. We can see exactly what is going on in your gut so that we know what to balance. And then we've got to get that gut-brain connection so strong and so resilient, because we can't take stress out of our lives. But what we can do is get our body, our vagus nerve, our nervous system, to be able to handle these things that come our way, bills and kids and jobs and pandemics and all of these things, so that it doesn't take a physical toll on us. So those are the 4 pillars, and that's what I do in the Happy Belly Method with my clients. And there's a reason why my program is 16 weeks, because it's a process. People always say, can you just tell me what to eat? I get that question all the time. Can you just tell me what to eat? If it were that simple, we wouldn't have a nation full of sick people, right? Because it's not that simple. It's very individualized for each person. And like I said, if you have your nutrition pillar, that's nice and strong. Let's say you have a really good diet, but these 3 pillars are down here. This is your health house. It's collapsing. So that's why I don't do one-off sessions. I don't just give advice on Facebook that is tips and tricks, things like that, because that is not going to solve your problems. What we need to do is build the health house with the 4 pillars. That is going to solve your problems. Anybody have any questions about any of that? Food intolerance. Did I cover everything I wanted to talk about? I think I did. Questions, food intolerance. The old way of dealing with it and the new way of really solving the problem is what we're talking about. So thank you again, everybody. I so love doing these weekly trainings. And if you have any questions, just comment on here or reach out to me on Messenger, or you can reach out to my assistant, Caroline, always, and she will help you out as well. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and I will see you next week.